Let me tell you something real tonight. A lot of people think love is about holding on tight, calling every minute, explaining everything, proving yourself over and over again. But I've lived long enough to learn this truth. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to pull back, not with anger, not with games, but with dignity. Because when you pull away the right way, that man will start thinking about you day and night. Let me slow this thing down and talk to you from a real place, because this first point right here changes everything if you truly understand it. Distance only works when it comes from self-respect, not manipulation. A lot of people get this twisted. They think pulling away means playing games, acting cold, trying to punish somebody, or pretending you don't care when deep down you're hurting. That kind of distance never lasts. It leaks. It shows up in angry texts, late night calls, emotional outbursts, and explanations nobody asked for. That's not power. That's pain dressed up as strategy. Real distance is quiet. Real distance is calm. Real distance doesn't need an announcement. When you pull away out of self-respect, you're not trying to control how he feels. You're controlling how you respond. And that right there is where the power lives. Because the moment you stop reacting emotionally to everything he does, you stop giving him the steering wheel to your emotions. See, when a woman pulls away because she finally realizes her value, her energy changes. She's no longer watching her phone every 5 minutes. She's no longer rearranging her schedule to be convenient. She's no longer explaining herself, overgiving, or tolerating confusion. And a man can feel that shift even if she never says a word. Men feel energy before they hear words. They feel absence before they feel explanations. When distance comes from manipulation, it's loud, it's dramatic, it's full of hints and social media posts and sudden attitude changes. But when distance comes from self-respect, it's steady, it's clean, it's dignified. You don't disappear to make him chase. You step back because you finally understand you don't need to chase anyone to be chosen. And here's what happens when you pull away like that. His mind starts filling in the gaps. Before, you were always there to reassure him, always there to smooth things over, always there to make things easy. Now, there's space. And the human mind hates unanswered questions. Silence forces reflection. Distance forces evaluation. He starts replaying moments he took for granted. He starts wondering why the dynamic feels different. He starts noticing your absence in places he never appreciated your presence. But listen closely. This only works when your heart is aligned with your actions. If you pull away while still emotionally begging inside, you'll crack, you'll reach out, you'll explain, you'll undo the very thing you started. Self-respect means you don't need immediate results to stay grounded. You're okay even if he doesn't respond the way you hoped, because your peace is no longer dependent on his attention. When a man realizes he no longer has automatic access to you, something shifts in him. Not because you were playing hard to get, but because you stopped being easy to overlook. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't make threats. You simply decided that confusion, inconsistency, and half-effort were no longer acceptable in your life. That decision alone changes the entire dynamic. Self-respect distance says, I know who I am, and I don't have to convince you. And that's dangerous, in a good way, because now he has to meet you where you are, not where you were bending yourself to fit him. He has to decide whether he's willing to step up or step aside, and either choice gives you clarity. A man starts thinking about you day and night when he senses that you're no longer waiting. Waiting is passive. Self-respect is active. You're actively choosing your time, your peace, your growth. And when he sees you living, not performing, not proving, just living, that's when curiosity turns into attachment. Let me tell you something else. Distance rooted in self-respect doesn't come with resentment. You're not angry, you're not bitter, you're not trying to teach him a lesson. You're simply done teaching people how to treat you. And that calm detachment is unsettling to someone who was used to your emotional availability. It makes him question his position in your life. It makes him wonder if he miscalculated your strength. And if he's emotionally mature, he'll step up, he'll communicate, he'll reflect, he'll realize what he stands to lose. And if he's not, he'll fade. but either outcome protects you. That's the beauty of pulling away the right way. You don't lose yourself trying to hold on. When distance is healthy, you don't count days. You don't track who texted last. You don't measure effort minute by minute. You simply return to yourself. You focus on your purpose, your joy, your healing. And from that place, whether he thinks about you or not no longer defines your worth. Ironically, that's exactly when he starts thinking the most. Because nothing is more memorable than a woman who knows when to step back without bitterness, without drama, without apology. That kind of distance isn't a tactic, it's a standard. And standards change everything. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about this second truth, because this is where people really start to feel something change inside them. Pulling away shifts the energy and restores your personal power. Now, power doesn't mean control. Power doesn't mean dominance. Power means ownership of yourself. And the moment you understand that, your whole posture in relationships changes. When you're leaning in too hard, when you're always reaching, checking, adjusting, and explaining, the energy is uneven. You're giving more than you're receiving, and deep down, you feel it. That imbalance drains you. It makes you anxious. It makes you overthink. And worst of all, it quietly teaches the other person that you'll always be there no matter what effort they give. Not because they're evil, but because energy teaches people how to treat you. Now, here's the part most folks miss. When you pull away, you're not taking power from him. You're taking power back to yourself. You're saying, I decide how close I get. I decide what I tolerate. I decide where my energy goes. That decision alone changes how you move, how you speak, how you show up. You stop chasing reactions and you start choosing responses. Energy is felt before it's understood. A man can sense when you're trying too hard, even if he can't explain it. He can sense when you've stopped. When you pull away, the energy shifts from need to neutrality, from waiting to living, from hoping to knowing. And that shift is powerful because it's unfamiliar to him. He was used to you leaning in. Now you're standing upright. When your energy changes, the dynamic changes. Before, he knew you were available emotionally at any time. He could come and go, test boundaries, take his time. But when you pull back, access becomes limited. And limited access creates awareness. Awareness creates thought. Thought creates attachment. Not because you forced it, but because the balance has been restored. Pulling away also reconnects you to yourself. You stop monitoring his moods and start listening to your own. You stop asking, why hasn't he called? And start asking, why am I settling for uncertainty? That internal conversation is the beginning of real power, because once you stop outsourcing your peace, nobody can take it hostage. A woman in her power doesn't announce her strength. She doesn't need to threaten to leave. She doesn't need to demand effort. Her energy does the talking. She becomes less reactive, more intentional. She laughs more. She sleeps better. She focuses on things that make her feel alive again. And that glow isn't accidental. It's the byproduct of reclaimed power. Now, let me say this clearly. Pulling away doesn't mean becoming cold or heartless. It means becoming centered. You can still be kind. You can still care. But you're no longer overextending yourself to keep someone comfortable. You stop shrinking so someone else doesn't feel challenged. And when you stop shrinking, people notice the space you now occupy. A man starts thinking about you more when he feels that your attention is no longer automatic. Before, your energy flowed toward him without resistance. Now it flows towards your purpose, your growth, your joy, and he's left wondering where he fits in that picture. That uncertainty pulls at him, not because you cause fear, but because you removed assumption. Here's the part that takes courage. When you pull away, you must be willing to sit with discomfort. Silence can feel heavy at first. Not reaching out can feel unnatural, but that discomfort is temporary. What's permanent is the respect you build for yourself when you don't abandon your boundaries just to soothe loneliness. Power grows in those quiet moments when you choose yourself anyway. When your power returns, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop over-explaining your needs. You stop trying to be understood by someone who hasn't shown the capacity to listen. And that steadiness changes how you be perceived. You become less predictable, not in behavior, but in availability. And predictability is what dulls attraction. Pulling away also reveals truth. If your energy shifting causes him to step up, communicate, and show consistency, then you know the connection has depth. If it causes him to fade, then you've learned something valuable without wasting years of your life. Either way, your power protected you. A powerful woman doesn't rush outcomes. She doesn't panic in silence. She trusts that what's meant to meet her will meet her at her level. And that trust is felt. It's magnetic. It makes people curious. It makes them reflect. It makes them ask themselves questions they avoided when everything was easy. When you pull away from a place of power, you're no longer trying to be chosen. You're choosing. You're no longer waiting for validation. You're validating yourself. And that internal shift is what makes someone think about you long after the conversation ends, long after the room goes quiet, long after the phone stays still. Because nothing lingers in the mind like a woman who knows her power, uses it calmly, and never begs for space she already owns. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you deeper into this third truth, because this one hits right at the heart of why pulling away works the way it does. When you stop overgiving, your value becomes clearer. A lot of people don't realize they're overgiving. They think they're being loving, supportive, patient, understanding. And those are beautiful qualities. But when love turns into overfunctioning, when care turns into sacrifice without balance, you quietly blur your own value. Overgiving looks like always being the one to check in first, always being the one to fix misunderstandings, always being the one to forgive quickly, explain intentions, and smooth things over so nothing ever feels uncomfortable. Overgiving feels like love, but it teaches the other person that your effort is unlimited. And when something feels unlimited, it stops feeling precious. When you pull away, you're not withdrawing love. You're withdrawing excess. You're no longer filling every silence. You're no longer carrying the emotional weight for two people. You're no longer showing up at full capacity for someone who hasn't decided how seriously they want to show up for you. And that's when your value becomes visible. Because value is easiest to see when it's no longer oversupplied. Think about this. If someone is always available, always forgiving, always accommodating, the mind stops registering the cost of losing them. But when that energy slows down, when the constant flow stops, the absence highlights what was there all along. He starts to notice the things you used to do without being asked, the emotional safety you provided, the encouragement, the consistency. And now that it's not automatic, it becomes meaningful. A man starts thinking about you more when he realizes that what you gave was not ordinary, but he only realizes that when it's no longer being handed to him freely. That's not punishment, that's perception. You didn't change who you are. You changed how much access he has to you. Overgiving often comes from fear, fear of losing someone, fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being enough. And that fear drives people to give more, try harder, stay longer, but value doesn't to increase with effort alone. Value increases when effort is matched. Pulling away gives you the space to see whether what you were giving was being appreciated or merely consumed. When you stop overgiving, you reclaim time, you reclaim emotional energy, you reclaim mental space. And that reclaimed space does something powerful. It makes you more present with yourself. You start noticing your own needs again. You start honoring your own feelings instead of minimizing them. And that self-attunement changes how you show up everywhere, not just in relationships. Here's something important. When you overgive, you often teach people that they don't have to earn your best. But when you pull away, you reset the standard. You're no longer auditioning for love. You're no longer proving loyalty. You're allowing someone to meet you halfway. And that shift forces clarity. Either he rises to the standard or he reveals that he benefited from your overgiving more than he valued you. A man thinking about you day and night isn't always thinking out of romance. Sometimes he's thinking out of realization. He's replaying moments he brushed past. He's remembering how you showed up when he didn't. He's questioning whether he misjudged your importance. And those thoughts don't come when you're still overgiving. They come when the giving stops. Pulling away also teaches you something vital about yourself. You learn that your worth doesn't disappear when you stop doing so much. You learn that love doesn't require exhaustion. You learn that being chosen shouldn't cost you your peace. And that learning strengthens you. It straightens your spine. It quiets your anxiety. And that grounded in urge is deeply attractive. When you're no longer overgiving, you don't rush to respond. You don't feel guilty for having a life. You don't apologize for needing clarity. You move with intention, and intention is magnetic. It signals self-respect. It signals boundaries. It signals that your time and energy are valuable resources, not endless supplies. Let me tell you something else. When you pull away from overgiving, you stop teaching people to underestimate you. You stop allowing familiarity to turn into complacency. You reintroduce yourself, not with words, but with behavior. And behavior always speaks louder. If he truly cares, your reduced availability will wake him up. He'll notice the difference. He'll ask questions. He'll put in effort. And if he doesn't, you'll finally see the relationship clearly, without the fog of constant giving. Either outcome is a win because clarity protects your future. A woman who stops overgiving doesn't become less loving. She becomes more selective. She gives where it's valued, not where it's merely accepted. And that selectivity makes her unforgettable. Because people don't forget the ones who taught them what they lost by taking too much for granted. That's why pulling away works. Not because you changed, but because you stopped giving away your value without confirmation that it was being honored. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about this fourth truth, because this one makes people uncomfortable, and anything that makes you uncomfortable usually means there's growth hiding in it. Silence makes space for reflection and emotional attachment, and I know silence scares people. Silence feels like losing control. Silence feels like rejection. Silence feels like you're doing nothing. But silence, when it's intentional, is one of the loudest statements you will ever make. Most people talk too much when they're afraid. They text too much, they explain too much, they react too fast. They fill every quiet moment because silence gives the mind time to wander, and wandering thoughts can be scary. But here's the truth. When you constantly communicate, you remove the other person's need to think. You answer questions before they even form. You soothe doubts before they can grow. And without realizing it, you rob the connection of depth. Silence creates room, and room is where reflection happens. When you pull back and allow silence to exist, his mind has space to replay moments. He starts remembering how you sounded, how you laughed, how you supported him. He starts noticing the emotional gap you used to fill, and that gap doesn't stay empty. The mind fills it with thought, curiosity, and memory. See, emotional attachment doesn't grow in constant noise. It grows in pauses. It grows in missing someone. It grows when the heart gets time to register absence. When you're always present, always available, always responding, there's no pause long enough for longing to form. Silence gives longing permission to breathe. Now, let me be clear. Silence is not punishment. Silence is not stonewalling. Silence is not giving someone the cold shoulder out of anger. That kind of silence is loud with resentment. The silence I'm talking about is peaceful. It's grounded. It's the silence of someone who is no longer trying to control the outcome. It's the silence of someone who trusts that what's meant to con, ET will reach out. When you choose silence, you stop interrupting his emotional process. You stop chasing clarity that can only come from within him. And that's when real reflection begins. He starts asking himself questions instead of responding to yours. He starts feeling instead of reacting. And feeling is where attachment lives. Think about it. When you're always explaining how you feel, he doesn't have to wonder. When you're always available, he doesn't have to imagine losing you. But when you go quiet in a healthy way, the mind fills in the blanks. And those blanks can be powerful. He starts wondering what you're thinking, what you're doing, whether you're moving on. And that curiosity keeps you on his mind long after the phone stays silent. Silence also changes your position. You're no longer chasing answers. You're no longer seeking reassurance. You're no longer begging for emotional presence. You're observing, and observation gives you clarity. You begin to see who reaches out when they feel the distance. You see who reflects and who replaces. And that information is priceless. A woman who is comfortable with silence sends a strong message without saying a word. She says, I don't need to fill space to feel secure. She says, I trust myself enough to sit with uncertainty. That confidence is rare, and rarity creates attraction. People think about what they don't fully understand, and silence adds mystery where familiarity once lived. Silence also forces accountability. When you're quiet, there's no distraction from the truth. He can't blame your reactions. He can't hide behind arguments. He can't accuse you of being emotional. All he has left is his own behavior and how it contributed to the distance. And that's when growth either happens or doesn't. But either way, the truth surfaces. Here's the part most people don't expect. Silence heals you. It calms your nervous system. It pulls your energy back into your body. You stop living in anticipation of his next move. You stop jumping every time your phone buzzes. You start breathing again. And that inner calm changes how you're perceived when communication resumes. You're steadier. You're clearer. You're no longer reactive. And that stability deepens emotional impact. A man starts thinking about you day and night when he senses that you're no longer trying to convince him of your presence. Silence removes the performance. It leaves behind authenticity. And authenticity lingers. He remembers you not because you demanded attention, but because your absence made him aware of your significance. Silence also tests emotional maturity. Someone who values you will use the space to reflect, to understand, to step forward with intention. Someone who doesn't will use the space to distract themselves. And that distinction protects you. Silence doesn't confuse what's real. It reveals it. When you embrace silence, you stop being afraid of losing someone who isn't choosing you fully. You realize that attachment built on constant reassurance isn't attachment at all. It's dependence. Real attachment survives quiet. It grows in stillness. It deepens in reflection. And that's why silence works. Not because it manipulates, but because it allows emotions to develop naturally. It gives the heart time to feel what the mouth keeps interrupting. It turns absence into awareness, and awareness into attachment. When you stop filling every space, you give someone the opportunity to step into it. And if they do, it's real. If they don't, you've saved yourself. Either way, silence didn't weaken you. It strengthened your position.